All right, guys, so it is draft week, and I'm happy to announce that I did finish up my semester for school, so I can really get into some draft videos as we lead up to the NFL draft, which, by the way, I will be live streaming days 1 and 2 with Jet Central here on the channel, also simulcasting on his channel, also on the Relevant app as well. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I really can't wait. And for this video, I want to discuss the top 5 needs for the Jaguars heading into the NFL draft. And, in free agency, in 2022 free agency, the Jaguars spent a lot of money on several different players. 8 players that are going to have either starter ability, or they're going to be starters, I should say, or they are going to be having big impacts for the Jaguars. The Jaguars dished out $155 million in guaranteed money. That set a record, and the Jaguars are set to move forward with those guys. So obviously, if I made this video 2 months ago, there's a good chance it's going to be a lot different than today. So with that said, as I go through this list, instead of going from need number 5 to need number 1, I thought it would be better for this video to instead go with my number 1 need and start talking about why I pushed other things back further. So with that said, let's get started. My number 1 need for the Jaguars is a wide receiver. And the Jaguars need a very specific wide receiver. They can't just go out there and add this, small little slot guy, because the Jaguars already have that. What the Jaguars need is they need that alpha outside wide receiver that can win 50-50 balls, that dominates at the point of attack, that is a physical guy, and a guy that can just really demand attention from a defense. The Jaguars don't really have that right now, and this also goes into the fact that you bring in that wide receiver, and it really allows the other wide receivers to do really good stuff. The Jaguars committed a lot of money to Christian Kirk, and I'm not going to sit there and trash on that selection, as I thought, hey, you're bringing in a really good wide receiver, but Christian Kirk is good at what Christian Kirk does, and he's more of a slot guy. He can go outside sometimes, but, he is best used in the slot, and he has that specific skill set where, a pretty good route runner. He has that speed, but, we cannot what's going to do that pick, or that free agency selection bad, is if the Jaguars force him into a role that is not good for him. And really bringing in that outside X wide receiver 1 is going to help out Christian Kirk a lot, and it's obviously going to help out Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence, you saw Blake Bortles' second season. He threw like 35 touchdown passes, and he had insane numbers. And a big reason for that is because Blake Bortles, before the play, could basically say, hey, I am going to throw this ball to Allen Robinson, and he's going to catch it. Trevor Lawrence, there's no guy on the Jaguars, either this year on the roster or last year, that Trevor Lawrence could do that with. There was nobody, and Trevor Lawrence needs that guy. And, really, as you're seeing free agency play out in just the NFL offseason this year, it's advantageous to draft your wide receivers. You're seeing Tyreek Hill move, Devontae Adams move, Amari Cooper move. You're seeing even potentially Deebo Samuel going. There's talks of A.J. Brown, even there's one more. The Washington guy, Terry McLaurin. There's a lot of guys that are trying to force their way out, and these guys are expensive. The Jaguars drove the receiver market up a lot, and wide receivers are becoming a bigger necessity every year to have that guy, and it's a lot better to draft the guy. So hopefully the Jaguars can the value of a draft spot fits the need, where the Jaguars can bring in a guy that's pretty good. So wide receiver, my number 1 need. And my number 2 need is defensive end. And much like the wide receiver spot, bringing in an alpha wide receiver, bringing in another defensive end that can, get a lot of pressure on a quarterback, can dominate in that manner, will really unlock the rest of the defense, whether it be Josh Allen, where Josh Allen isn't the number 1 focus and the only focus. They now have 2 guys to account for. So both those guys should be able to feed off each other very well. But it'll also lead to turnovers on the back 7. The Jaguars last year were terrible on the turnover differential margin, whether it be committing turnovers on offense or just not doing enough turnovers on a defense. It was just bad. And the only games that we won were games where the Jaguars forced turnovers. So that needs to continue to come, but it's not going to come if the quarterback has all day in a pocket. It's not going to come if the Jaguars can't get off the field on third down because they're getting no pressure on a quarterback. It's not going to come like that. So, the best games are games where you're forcing turnovers, where the offense is starting the ball at the 40, 50, even in positive territory into the other side. It's going to come that way instead of, always maybe forcing punts or getting the ball in kickoffs where you're, pinned within a 25-yard line. They're big game records when it comes to games. So defensive end, big need, and there's a good chance they address that with the number 1 overall pick, whether it be Trayvon Walker or Aiden Hutchinson. Now, my number 3 need is linebacker. Now, I think linebacker might be the most glaring hole right now on the whole entire team, because it's the one thing that it looks like you can't really slot anybody in to start there. Obviously, they sign Lewican in the offseason, but that's one linebacker. They let Miles Jack go. We don't have Damian Wilson anymore. So right now, and after Dylan Moses, a lot of people maybe, hey, Dylan Moses might be able to go there. He got cut. So now we just pretty much have Shaq Quarterman, and I don't know who else. So that's a big need. And why don't I have this pushed up more is this. Look, like with the wide receiver position, I don't mind struggling because, or like I don't want to struggle in games, I should say, because we don't have wide receivers that are getting open. We don't have wide receivers that are winning 50-50 balls. We don't have guys that are dominating the point of attack. I don't want to lose games because Trevor Lawrence just can't throw it to anybody. I also don't want to lose games because the defensive end can't get to the quarterback. I don't want to lose games because we can't get off the field on third down. I don't want to lose games because we can't generate any kind of pass rush, or our defensive line, can't stop players in the run game. I don't mind losing some games because sometimes the linebacker blows a coverage, or sometimes the linebacker misses his assignment in the hole. It's just mainly this is here at number 3 because of positional value. That's the big reason why linebacker is number 3 on this list. However, it probably is the number 1 need when it comes to like big holes where we don't know who's going to start there. So with all that said, linebacker number 3. Now, number 4 on this list is interior offensive line. Now, the Jaguars spent a lot of money on Brandon Sheriff in free agency. So he is a all-pro, Pro Bowler who has some injury history that's slotted. You can plug him right into the right guard spot. However, the Jaguars lost Brandon Linder and Andrew Norwell, guys that have been starting with the Jaguars over the last several seasons. So right now you have Tyler Shatley, who has been on the Jaguars his whole career. However, he's a pretty cheap guy. I mean, there's a reason why he's not making a ton of money. It's because he's not like an elite player at that spot. So he's slated to play center. And then who's going to play left guard for us? It's probably going to be Brandon Barch. He's third year on the Jaguars, former 4th-round pick, converted from tight end to lineman in college. And, he was solid last year. He was solid, but he's not over the top. He's not. And he's not a game changer. So interior offensive line, you're also extremely, extremely thin at the position. And you know how often offensive linemen get hurt, and especially when you look at the fact that almost 50% of your offense is offensive linemen. It's very important. So just getting bodies in there is going to be important, and interior offensive lineman is big. And my number 5 need is offensive tackle, because while you look at this year, it may not be a huge need. You have Cam Robinson, who playing on a franchise tag. You also have Jawan Taylor, who's been starting the last 3 years, and you have Walker Little, who's very intriguing. So those are 3 offensive tackles. However, if you look ahead to 2023, Cam Robinson and Jawan Taylor are both slotted to be free agents. So at the moment, the only guy that's guaranteed on the Jaguars in 2023 is Walker Little. So you have a big need basically tomorrow, or next year, I should say, to fill the offensive tackle position. And you can also get better at that position. And obviously right now, the number 1 pick in the draft, it's a debate between offensive tackle and defensive end. However, if you get an offensive tackle in this draft, it almost makes 4 and 5 better with interior offensive line and tackle, because obviously, you draft a guy like Ike Ekwonu, you add another tackle. That's awesome. But the good thing is that you might be able to do a similar situation as the Jaguars in 2013, which what they did with Eugene Monroe and Luke Jokel. And before I get into this, the reason why this did not work was because Luke Jokel was terrible. It's not because it was a bad plan, but Luke Jokel started at right tackle to begin the year. And at the trade deadline, the Jaguars traded away Eugene Monroe, and then they flipped what's his face Jokel over to left tackle. They could do something very similar where they play Ike Ekwonu or Evan Neal at guard, and then they move them over at the trade deadline. Move Cam Robinson for, I don't know, a 4th-round pick or something, and then you're moving Ekwonu or Neal over to their natural position at left tackle. And I think that could be a good strategy. With this draft, I'm not going to be really, really mad if we. The only guy I would probably be upset about is maybe Trayvon Walker at number 1. Outside of that, if the Jaguars get one of these offensive tackles, I would not be mad because, hey, I'm all about adding more to the offense to really make sure our franchise quarterback is being done right. So with all that said, those are my top 5 needs for the Jaguars. Let me know what some of you guys think, and thank you for continuing to stick with this channel. I'm very excited for the draft, and with all that said, go Jags.